bridge of the USS Valiant hummed with subdued activity as it approached the volatile sector where two alien factions were engaged in a heated battle. Captain David Grant surveyed the scene from his command console, the glow of distant explosions reflecting in his eyes. "Report, Commander Hawkins," Captain Grant demanded, his voice steady despite the tension. Commander Eric Hawkins adjusted the sensors and replied, "Both factions are still heavily engaged, Captain. We've managed to remain undetected so far. Our stealth technology is holding." Beside Hawkins, Tactical Officer Lieutenant James Diaz monitored the weapon systems. "Weapons are on standby, sir. We can engage at your command." Grant nodded, his gaze never leaving the viewport. "No, we hold our position for now. Let's understand what we're walking into before we make our presence known." At that moment, Science Officer Dr. Alan Singh chimed in from his station. "I've analyzed the combat strategies of both factions. There's a significant technological disparity. The smaller group is using guerrilla tactics, likely due to resource limitations." "Is there a possibility for diplomatic contact?" Grant asked, turning towards Communications Officer Lieutenant Rachel Kim. "It's risky, Captain. Both factions are broadcasting universal distress signals and warnings to stay clear of the conflict zone. They seem desperate," Kim reported. Grant considered his options. Turning to his crew, he declared, "We're not here to start a war, but to prevent one from spreading. Commander Hawkins, set up a communication link to both factions. Broadcast our intent to mediate." Hawkins hesitated. "Broadcasting might expose us to unnecessary risk, Captain." "I understand, Commander, but we need to stop this conflict before it escalates further. We need them to know we're here, and we're not a threat. Yet," Grant countered. As Hawkins prepared the communication link, Dr. Singh added, "The smaller faction's technology might be inferior, but their tactics are innovative. They could be valuable allies or formidable enemies if pushed to desperation." Grant nodded. "Keep that in mind, everyone. We're not here to conquer, but to stabilize." The bridge crew worked silently, each member aware of the gravity of their mission. Suddenly, Lieutenant Diaz reported, "Captain, I've detected a shift in the battle pattern. The smaller faction seems to be losing ground rapidly." "Time is running out," Grant murmured. He stood up, his figure casting a long shadow across the bridge. "Lieutenant Kim, open a channel to both factions. Let's see if they're willing to listen." Kim nodded, her fingers moving swiftly over her console. "Channel open, Captain." Grant cleared his throat and began. "This is Captain David Grant of the USS Valiant. We are here in peace and seek to mediate an end to this conflict. We are prepared to offer assistance to those who cease hostility." The crew waited in silence, the tension almost palpable. Minutes stretched as they awaited a response. Finally, a crackled voice responded, "USS Valiant, this is Commander Silac of the Reticulan Front. We are prepared to discuss your proposal, but we cannot guarantee the same from the Tolkar Coalition." Grant exchanged a glance with Hawkins, who nodded slightly. "Commander Silac, we appreciate your willingness to communicate. Let's start with what you need to end this conflict." As the conversation unfolded, Grant felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of a resolution, or perhaps it was the calm before another storm. Either way, the USS Valiant was now deeply involved, and there was no turning back. The dimly lit bridge of the USS Valiant buzzed with heightened activity following their initial outreach to the embattled alien factions. Captain David Grant stood firm, a solemn expression etched across his face as he absorbed the latest developments relayed by his crew. Commander Eric Hawkins turned from his console, his voice tinged with urgency. "Captain, the Tolkar Coalition has rejected our offer to mediate. They seem to view our presence as a threat, possibly an alliance with the Reticulans." David frowned, processing the news. "And the Reticulans, Commander Hawkins?" "They're cautious but open to discussions," Hawkins replied. "They've asked for guarantees of protection if they agree to cease fire." Lieutenant James Diaz interjected from the tactical station. "Sir, I recommend we show a display of force. It might persuade the Tolkar to reconsider their stance." David considered this for a moment. "No, we won't escalate unless absolutely necessary. Our aim here is to stabilize, not provoke further conflict. Let's focus on solidifying the trust with the Reticulans. Perhaps that will bring the Tolkars to the negotiating table." Dr. Alan Singh, the ship's resident expert on alien cultures, nodded in agreement. Building trust with the Reticulans could indeed serve as a catalyst. Their influence over the smaller factions might sway overall sentiment. Lieutenant Rachel Kim updated from her communications console. "Sir, I have Commander Silac of the Reticulans on standby for a secure video conference." "Put him through, Lieutenant," David instructed, his tone decisive. The main screen flickered to life, displaying the rugged features of Commander Silac, his face marked by the strains of war. "Captain Grant, your offer is received with some skepticism," Silac began, his voice gruff. "Why should we trust your people? We know little of humans." David met the commander's gaze through the screen. "Understandable, Commander, but we come with no agenda other than peace. We're prepared to provide humanitarian aid to your people and protect them from further Tolkar aggression while talks are underway." Silac's eyes narrowed, assessing the sincerity in David's words. After a tense pause, he responded, "I will consult with my council. I cannot promise more until then. As a gesture of good faith, we'll keep our fleet in a defensive formation around your planet. No offensive moves will be made without prior warning," David assured. The screen blinked off as the communication ended, leaving the bridge crew in a brief silence, contemplating their next moves. "Captain, maintaining a defensive perimeter around Reticulan space could stretch our resources thin," Hawkins cautioned, concern lining his features. David nodded, aware of the risks. "I know, but our presence might deter the Tolkar, at least temporarily. We need to buy time until the Reticulans can negotiate from a position of strength. Dr. Singh, I want you to work with Lieutenant Kim, see if there's any cultural leverage we can use to our advantage." Dr. Singh acknowledged with a quick, "Yes, Captain," before moving to discuss with Kim. Turning to Diaz, David ordered, "Lieutenant, keep a close watch on all tactical feeds. If the Tolkar so much as reposition a scout ship, I want to know immediately." "Yes, sir," Diaz affirmed, his eyes already scanning the incoming data streams. As the crew settled into their tasks, David stepped aside, gazing out at the stars. His mind raced with strategies and contingencies, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. The USS Valiant was far from home, and here, in the uncharted expanses of space, surrounded by uncertainty and potential hostility, every decision could tip the balance of peace and war. Captain David Grant stood resolute at the helm of the USS Valiant, his eyes locked on the tactical display. The Tolkar coalition had ramped up their offensive, and the smaller Reticulan faction was buckling under the pressure. "Commander Hawkins, status report on the Tolkar fleet," David ordered, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere of the bridge. "They're advancing on the Reticulan's outer defense perimeter, Captain. It looks like a full-scale assault is imminent," Commander Eric Hawkins replied, his fingers dancing across the console to bring up real-time images of the advancing enemy ships. David nodded grimly. "Lieutenant Diaz, prepare our EMP missiles. Target the lead ships only. We need to disable them without causing permanent damage." Lieutenant James Diaz, the tactical officer, acknowledged with a brisk, "Yes, Captain." He quickly set to work, coordinating with the weapons team to ensure precision targeting. The bridge crew held their breath as the Valiant's weapon systems came online. The low hum of energy charging filled the space. David's command was clear. "Fire EMPs on my mark. Now!" The missiles streaked across space, their trails glowing against the backdrop of stars. Moments later, bursts of electric blue light signaled successful hits against the Tolkar ships, their systems going dark as the EMPs overloaded their circuits. "We've got successful strikes on all targets, Captain. Lead Tolkar vessels are disabled," Diaz reported, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. David allowed himself a brief nod of approval. "Good work. Open a channel to the Tolkar flagship, Lieutenant Kim." Lieutenant Rachel Kim, the communications officer, adjusted her headset and worked her console. "Channel open, sir." The main screen flickered and then stabilized to show the imposing figure of the Tolkar commander, his face a mask of fury. "Human vessel, you dare attack us?" he bellowed, his voice booming through the bridge. David met the commander's anger with calm authority. "We have disabled your lead ships to prevent unnecessary loss of life. Stand down your forces and return to your territory. We can discuss this conflict without further bloodshed." The Tolkar commander's eyes narrowed. "You intervene in matters that do not concern you, human. This will not go unanswered." "We are here to maintain peace," David replied firmly. "Consider this a demonstration of our resolve. We do not wish to escalate, but we will protect the Reticulans from unwarranted aggression." The commander scoffed, his disdain palpable even through the digital link. "This is not the end, Captain Grant." As the communication cut, tension remained high on the bridge. David turned to his crew, his demeanor composed yet stern. "Maintain defensive positions and keep monitoring their communications. I want updates on their movements every 10 minutes. We need to be ready for their next move." Dr. Alan Singh approached, his expression troubled. Captain, the toll cars are prideful warriors. This setback might provoke a harsh response. We should be prepared for a counterstrike. David acknowledged with a nod. Understood, Dr. Singh. We'll stay vigilant. Our goal remains to de-escalate the situation while protecting the reticulans. As the crew returned to their stations, David watched the disabled toll car ships drifting in space. This first strike was a gamble, one that could either bring the toll cars to the negotiating table or plunge them deeper into war. But it was a risk he had to take, for peace, for stability, and for the defense of those caught in the crossfire. In the aftermath of the EMP strike, the bridge of the USS Valiant was alive with tense activity. Captain David Grant watched as the once advancing toll car fleet stalled, their lead ships disabled but not destroyed, a clear message of restraint and capability. Captain, we've got a communication coming in from the reticulans, Lieutenant Rachel Kim reported, her voice steady despite the undercurrents of urgency. Put it through, Lieutenant, Captain Grant commanded, turning toward the main screen. The image of a reticulan leader, Commander Lyra, appeared. Her expression was a mixture of relief and caution. Captain Grant, we observed your intervention. While we are grateful for the reprieve, we are concerned about the escalation of hostilities. How do you propose we proceed? Lyra asked, her tone reflecting the gravity of the situation. David met her gaze firmly. Commander Lyra, our goal is to ensure stability and prevent further conflict. We believe that a united front may discourage further toll car aggression. Would you be willing to discuss a strategic alliance? Lyra paused, her eyes reflecting the weight of her decision. After a moment, she nodded. We are open to this discussion, Captain. I will need to consult with my advisors, but I see the wisdom in your proposal. Thank you, Commander. We'll coordinate a meeting place and time. Lieutenant Kim will stay in contact, David replied, signaling to Kim to manage the logistics. As the communication ended, Commander Eric Hawkins leaned in. Sir, if we're aligning with the reticulans, we need to be prepared for any backlash from the toll car. They won't take this lightly. David nodded in agreement. I'm aware, Commander. Prepare for potential countermeasures. I want updates on any movement from the toll car fleet. Lieutenant Diaz, ensure our defenses are at maximum readiness. Yes, Captain, Diaz responded, immediately turning to his console to adjust the ship's defensive systems. Dr. Alan Singh approached David, his voice low. Captain, forming an alliance with the reticulans could significantly shift regional power dynamics. We should be cautious about how deeply we entangle ourselves. David considered this, his gaze fixed on the star-studded void outside. Understood, Doctor. But our immediate concern is preventing a larger war. We'll navigate the political implications as they come. As the crew set about their tasks, the Valiant's strategic AI, Victor, chimed in. Captain, analysis suggests a 68% probability that the toll car will retaliate within the next 12 hours. Keep monitoring their communications, Victor. Any change in that probability, I want to know immediately, David instructed, turning his attention back to the tactical display. Hours later, as the Valiant hovered near reticulan space, the meeting with the reticulan leaders took place aboard their command ship. The discussion was intense, with both humans and reticulans expressing their fears and hopes. An alliance, even a temporary one, could bring stability, David reiterated, looking around at the gathered reticulan leaders. Commander Lyra nodded, her resolve clear. Let's outline the terms. Protection in exchange for support. We don't expect you to fight our wars, Captain, but your presence deters further toll car advances. We agree on these terms, David confirmed, aware of the delicate balance they were maintaining. As they finalized the agreement, a sudden alert sounded through the Valiant. Captain, the toll car are mobilizing. It looks like they're preparing for a strike. Diaz's voice came through the comlink, urgent and strained. David stood, his decision immediate. Excuse me, Commander Lyra, duty calls. We'll assist in defending your space as agreed. As he returned to the Valiant, the ship braced for the impending conflict, now not just a mediator but an active participant in the defense of the reticulans. The weight of his decisions, both military and moral, rested heavily on David Grant's shoulders as he prepared to face whatever came next. The alliance between the USS Valiant and the reticulan forces had been holding steady, with Captain David Grant maneuvering the human fleet to provide strategic support. However, tensions remained high as the toll car coalition seemed to bide their time, making no immediate moves after their initial retreat. On the bridge of the Valiant, Commander Eric Hawkins scrutinized the latest sensor data. Captain, I'm detecting unusual signals from the reticulan flagship. It looks like... Encrypted communications with an unknown recipient. Captain Grant frowned, his sense of unease growing. Can we decrypt the signals? Lieutenant Rachel Kim, working alongside the communications team, shook her head. It's a complex cipher, Captain, but we're working on it. Should have something soon. David paced briefly before stopping and facing his crew. Keep me updated. I want to know the moment you break through. In the meantime, let's not jump to conclusions. As the hours passed, the atmosphere on the bridge was tense, with crew members casting uneasy glances toward the main screen. Finally, Kim signaled a breakthrough. Captain, we've decrypted the message. It's not good news. The Reticulans have been negotiating with the toll car, possibly planning a double cross. David's jaw clenched tightly. Get me a secure line to Commander Lyra. Now. The screen flickered to life, showing Commander Lyra, her expression guarded. Captain Grant, to what do I owe this call? David didn't mince words. Commander, we've intercepted communications between your flagship and the Toll Car Coalition. Care to explain? Lyra's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. Captain, we are simply ensuring our survival. The Toll Car offered us a deal to join forces against you, promising resources and protection. We haven't agreed to anything yet. David's voice was stern. We entered this alliance in good faith, Commander. Betraying us now could lead to consequences neither of us wants. Lyra sighed, the weight of her decision visible. I understand, Captain. Give me time to sort this out. I assure you we value your support. Make it quick, Commander. We're still here to help, but not at the expense of our own security. David replied before ending the communication. Turning to his crew, he issued new orders. Commander Hawkins, maintain a close watch on both Reticulan and toll car movements. We need to be ready for anything. Lieutenant Diaz, bring our weapon systems to high alert. I want everything ready to respond at a moment's notice. Yes, Captain, they responded in unison. Dr. Alan Singh approached David with a concerned look. Captain, this betrayal could be a ruse or a real threat. We need to consider the possibility that the Reticulans are playing both sides to secure the best outcome for themselves. David nodded, his gaze fixed on the starfield ahead. Prepare a contingency plan, Doctor. We might need to extract ourselves from this situation quickly. As the Valiant continued its vigilant patrol, the bridge remained a hub of whispered strategy and watchful waiting. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the ship. Captain, multiple toll car warships are advancing towards our position, Hawkins announced, his voice tense. David straightened, his eyes hardening. Battle stations. It seems we have our answer. Whether the Reticulans are with us or against us, we stand ready. As the crew sprang into action, Captain Grant prepared to face the possibility of a two-front battle, with potential enemies on both sides. The next few hours would be crucial in determining the fate of the USS Valiant and its mission in this volatile region of space. The situation escalated rapidly after the revelation of the Reticulan negotiations with the Toll Car Coalition. Captain David Grant, standing resolute on the bridge of the USS Valiant, prepared his crew for the impending confrontation. Commander Hawkins, what's the status of the Toll Car fleet? Captain Grant asked, his voice calm despite the brewing storm. They're approaching fast, Captain. Weapons hot, and they're not slowing down, replied Commander Eric Hawkins, his hands moving deftly over his console to keep up with the incoming data. Any response from the Reticulans yet? Grant continued, his gaze fixed on the main screen displaying the advancing ships. Silence, Captain. It's like they're waiting to see who comes out on top before committing, Hawkins added grimly. Captain Grant nodded, turning to Lieutenant James Diaz at the tactical station. Lieutenant, it's time to show the toll car that we're not just here to posture. Deploy the drone fleet for a frontal assault and ready the EMP cannons, non-lethal force until we have no other options. Yes, Captain. Deploying drones now, Diaz responded, initiating the sequence. The small but agile drone fleet buzzed away from the Valiant, speeding towards the toll car ships with disruptive payloads designed to disable, not destroy. As the drones engaged, a sudden barrage of communications flooded in. Lieutenant Rachel Kim relayed the urgent messages. Captain, the Reticulans are hailing us. They seem desperate. Put them through, Captain Grant commanded. Commander Lyra's face appeared on the screen, her expression tense. Captain Grant, we've made a grave mistake. The toll car deceived us. They're planning to wipe out both our forces regardless of any deal. We need your help. David's eyes narrowed, processing the betrayal and its swift revelation. All right, Commander. We'll cover your retreat. Pull back your ships, and we'll handle the toll car advance. Thank you, Captain. We won't forget this, Lyra said, a trace of relief in her voice as her transmission cut off. Turning back to his crew, Captain Grant issued new orders. Focus all defensive systems on intercepting incoming fire. Protect the Reticulan ships as they fall back. We're not just fighting for them. We're upholding our commitment to stability in this sector. The battle raged on, with the USS Valiant skillfully maneuvering between the Tolkar warships and the retreating Reticulan fleet. EMP cannons fired in coordinated bursts, disabling several Tolkar vessels and disrupting their formation. Dr. Alan Singh, observing the conflict's dynamics, approached Captain Grant. The Tolkar's aggression could unite the other factions against them, Captain. We might turn this conflict in our favor if we manage to hold the line here. Let's hope you're right, Doctor. Keep monitoring the situation and provide any strategic insights you can, Grant replied, his focus never wavering from the battlefield. As the Valiant continued to hold its ground, the tide began to turn. The combined might of the human technology and strategic acumen began to wear down the Tolkar forces. One by one, their ships faltered under the relentless assault of the drones and the precision strikes of the EMP cannons. Finally, as the last of the Tolkar ships were disabled, a tense peace settled over the area. Captain Grant allowed himself a brief moment of relief before addressing his crew. Excellent work, everyone. Let's start damage assessments and help the Reticulans with their recovery efforts. We've shown that we are a force for peace, capable of defending our allies and ourselves. The crew nodded, a sense of pride mingling with exhaustion as they began the aftermath operations. The battle was over, but the war for peace and stability was far from done. As they set about their tasks, the USS Valiant stood vigilant, ready to face whatever challenges came next in the vast expanse of space. The air on the bridge of the USS Valiant was charged with a mixture of anticipation and resolve as Captain David Grant prepared his crew for what could be the concluding engagement of this conflict. The Tolkar coalition, now significantly weakened by their failed strategies and the surprise defection back to the Reticulan side, seemed to be gathering their forces for one last stand. Captain, the Tolkar fleet is regrouping near the asteroid belt of Zeta 4. It appears they are consolidating all remaining ships for a final push, reported Commander Eric Hawkins, analyzing the latest strategic maps displayed on the screen. Captain Grant nodded, his eyes scanning the data. It looks like they're desperate, but that could make them more dangerous. We need to end this now, decisively and with minimal further casualties. What's the status of our allies? Lieutenant Rachel Kim responded from her station. The Reticulans are ready, Captain. After your last intervention, they've pledged full cooperation. They're aligning their remaining forces with ours for the assault. Good. Let's make sure our coordination is seamless. Dr. Singh, any input on the Tolkar's likely tactics given their current state? Captain Grant asked, turning to his science officer for insights. Dr. Alan Singh adjusted his glasses, reviewing his notes. Given their cultural pride and military doctrine, Captain, I'd expect them to concentrate their firepower early in an attempt to break our lines. If we withstand their initial surge, their morale will likely falter. Understood. Lieutenant Diaz, set up our fleet in a defensive formation around the asteroid belt. Use the asteroids as natural cover. Prepare all hands for combat, Captain Grant instructed, his voice firm, conveying the gravity of the impending clash. Yes, sir. Deploying fleet and configuring shields to maximize coverage from asteroid debris, Diaz acknowledged, executing the orders with practiced efficiency. As the Valiant and its allied fleet maneuvered into position, the Tolkar fleet emerged from the other side of the asteroid belt, their ships battered but still menacing as they powered towards the human Reticulan blockade. The Tolkar are in range, Captain. They're opening fire, Hawkins announced as the bridge lights flickered under the strain of incoming fire. Return fire. Target their weapon systems and propulsion. I want them disabled, not destroyed. Let's bring as many as possible to the negotiating table after this, Captain Grant commanded, watching the battle unfold on the main display. The Valiant shuddered as its cannons returned fire, brilliant beams of energy slicing through the darkness of space to strike at the heart of the Tolkar assault. Beside them, Reticulan fighters darted in and out of the asteroid field, harrying the Tolkar flanks and exploiting openings created by the Valiant's heavier firepower. The battle raged, the void between the ships alight with the exchange of deadly intent. However, the disciplined fire and strategic acumen of Captain Grant's forces quickly began to tell. One by one, Tolkar ships lost power and drifted, their systems overwhelmed by the precise and relentless assault. As the tide turned clearly in favor of the human-Reticulan alliance, a ceasefire was finally called. Captain Grant opened a channel to the remaining Tolkar ships. "This is Captain David Grant of the USS Valiant. Your fleet is disabled. We can end this here with no further bloodshed. Stand down and prepare for armistice talks." After a tense pause, the battered Tolkar commander responded, his voice weary. "We accept your terms, Captain. We have no wish to continue this fight." With the final threat neutralized, Captain Grant allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. "Prepare teams for boarding and aid. Let's show them that our mission was always peace." As the crew of the Valiant and their allies worked to secure the area and provide assistance to the disabled ships, the echoes of battle faded into a cautious hope. This conflict had tested the resolve and capabilities of the USS Valiant and its captain, but it had also shown the power of unity and the strength of a well-led fleet. The war was over, at least for now, and the seeds of a lasting peace were ready to be sown. As the dust settled over the asteroid field of Zeta 4, Captain David Grant stood silently on the bridge of the USS Valiant, surveying the aftermath of their final confrontation with the Tolkar coalition. The holoscreen displayed the scattered, disabled ships against the stark backdrop of space, a solemn reminder of the conflict's cost. "Report, Commander Hawkins," Captain Grant requested, his voice carrying a weight that matched the gravity of their recent victory. "Sir, the Tolkar fleet has completely ceased hostilities. We have teams boarding their ships now, assisting with repairs and medical aid. The Reticulans are coordinating with us. They've been instrumental in securing the ceasefire," Commander Eric Hawkins replied, his report tinged with relief yet underscored by fatigue. "And the losses?" Captain Grant asked, bracing himself for the numbers that quantified the human and material costs. "Minimal casualties on our side, thanks to our tactics and shields. The Tolkars weren't so fortunate, but we're doing what we can for their wounded," Lieutenant James Diaz added from his station at Tactical. David nodded solemnly, his mind on the lives changed forever by the conflict. "And the political situation?" Dr. Alan Singh stepped forward, offering a tablet with the latest updates. "Negotiations for a lasting peace are underway. The Tolkars are subdued for now, and with Reticulan support, we're hopeful for a stable resolution. It seems the balance of power in this sector may finally shift towards peace." "That's good to hear, Doctor. Keep me updated on the progress," David responded, his gaze returning to the viewport. Turning to face his crew, Captain Grant's expression softened slightly as he addressed them. "This victory didn't come without cost, but your efforts have potentially opened a new chapter of peace in this sector. I'm proud of each and every one of you." Lieutenant Rachel Kim, who had been coordinating communications throughout the ordeal, spoke up. "Sir, there's a message from Earth Command. They're commending our actions and confirming that diplomatic teams are en route to assist with the peace process." "Thank you, Lieutenant. Let's prepare for their arrival and ensure that the transition to a diplomatic resolution is as smooth as possible," David directed, his thoughts already turning to the future. As the crew busied themselves with their new orders, Captain Grant took a moment for himself at the viewport. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter now, a silent testament to the possibilities that lay in human perseverance and the pursuit of peace. The road ahead would be filled with new challenges and responsibilities, but for now, the USS Valiant stood as a beacon of stability in a tumultuous galaxy. Captain David Grant knew that the days to come would require just as much diplomacy as they had warfare, but he was ready. Ready to lead, ready to negotiate, and more than anything, ready to help forge a lasting peace that would honor the sacrifices made by all sides in the shadows of the asteroids of Zeta 4. Reflecting on the cost, the victories, and the tentative peace, Captain Grant felt a resolve strengthen within him. This was what they fought for, not just to win battles, but to create a space where diplomacy could thrive over destruction. As the Valiant prepared for the arrival of Earth's diplomats, he knew that the real work, the work of peace, was just beginning.